The first time he arrived early, she noticed, not because she was waiting for him, but because she wasn't. Elena stood in the kitchen, gently rocking Amara against her shoulder, as soft morning light spilled across the counter. The house was quiet, calm. Her routine had settled into something steady now, predictable, but in a way that felt safe, not boring. Feed, rest, adjust, breathe. No chaos, no uncertainty, just structure. A knock came at the door. Soft, measured, not rushed, not hesitant, intentional. Elena didn't move immediately. She finished what she was doing first, adjusted the baby blanket, pressed a light kiss against Amara's head. Then she walked to the door. When she opened it, Daniel stood there, earlier than usual, not dressed to impress, not trying to look like anything other than what he was. Present. "You're early," she said. Her tone wasn't surprised, just observant. "I said I'd come in the morning," he replied. "You usually come later." A small pause. "I'm trying to change that." She held his gaze for a moment, then stepped aside. "Come in." No smile, no resistance, just acceptance. And that was enough. Daniel stepped inside, his eyes briefly scanning the space. It looked different now, lived in, not the way it used to be. Better, warmer. He noticed small things. A folded blanket on the couch. Baby items placed neatly, not scattered. A quiet sense of order. This wasn't the home he left. This was something she had built, and it showed. "She just woke up?" he asked, nodding slightly toward Amara. Elena adjusted her hold slightly. "A few minutes ago." He stepped closer. Not too close. "Can I?" She didn't answer right away. Not out of hesitation, out of habit now, because every request was something she evaluated. Then she nodded. "Wash your hands first." Simple, clear. Daniel didn't question it. He walked straight to the sink, turned on the water. Because this wasn't about pride anymore. It was about trust. And trust started with small things. When he returned, she carefully placed Amara into his arms. This time, he didn't hesitate. His movements were steadier now, more natural. And Elena noticed that, not with praise, but with quiet acknowledgement. "She looks more alert today," he said softly. "She is," Elena replied. "She's starting to stay awake longer." Daniel nodded, gently rocking her. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was working, like two people learning how to exist in the same space again, without forcing anything. After a moment, Elena turned back toward the counter. "You can sit," she said. Daniel did, carefully, like he understood that even sitting here was something he hadn't earned lightly. Across from him, Elena poured tea into a cup. "You don't have to come this early every time," she said. Not dismissing, just stating. Daniel looked up. "I want to." A pause. "Why?" The question wasn't emotional. It was direct. Because intention mattered now. Daniel held her gaze. "Because I missed enough already." Elena didn't respond immediately. She placed the cup down, sat across from him, her expression calm, but her eyes still searching. "Missing something doesn't automatically mean you value it," she said. The words landed gently, but firmly. Daniel nodded slowly. "I know." A pause. "That's why I'm here now." Elena leaned back slightly. "That's a start," she said. "Not agreement, not rejection, just acknowledgement." Amara stirred slightly in his arms. Daniel adjusted instinctively. And this time, it felt natural. Elena noticed again, not the movement, the consistency, because he didn't need to think about it anymore. He just did it. And that was different. "You're getting comfortable," she said. Daniel glanced up. A small, honest smile forming. "I'm trying to be." Elena nodded once, then said something that shifted the moment. "Comfort doesn't mean you belong." Silence, not harsh, but clear, because comfort could be temporary. Belonging had to be earned. Daniel didn't argue. He simply nodded. "I understand." And this time, he didn't rush to prove it. He just sat there, holding his daughter, present. Because for the first time, he wasn't trying to get somewhere. He was learning how to stay, and staying was something he had never done right before. Across the room, Elena watched him quietly, not emotionally, not skeptically, just aware, because something was changing. Not fast, not dramatically, but steadily, and sometimes, that's the only kind of change that lasts. The difference didn't show in big moments. It showed in the small ones. Daniel arrived again the next day, and the day after that, not late, not inconsistent, steady. At first, Elena didn't say anything about it. She didn't praise it, didn't acknowledge it out loud, but she noticed, because consistency has a rhythm, and once you feel it, you can't ignore it. That morning, Elena stood by the window, gently swaying as Amara rested against her shoulder. The house was quiet again. Then, a knock, same time, same pattern. Elena didn't check the clock this time. She already knew. When she opened the door, Daniel stood there, holding a small bag. "Morning," he said. "Morning." Her tone was neutral, but softer than before. He stepped inside. "What's that?" she asked, nodding toward the bag. "Just a few things," he replied. "Diapers, some baby wipes." A pause. I looked up what she might need. Elena held his gaze for a moment, not impressed, but aware. "You don't have to bring things every time," she said. "I know," he replied. "I want to." There it was again. Want, not obligation. And that mattered, because one of the quiet truths Elena had learned was this: people who only act out of obligation will eventually stop. People who act out of intention stay longer. She stepped aside. "Come in." Inside, Daniel placed the bag carefully on the table, not like he was trying to prove anything, just contributing, and that subtle difference didn't go unnoticed. Amara made a soft sound. Daniel looked over immediately. "Is she hungry?" Elena nodded. "Yeah, she's about to be." He didn't step forward this time, didn't assume, he waited. And that was new, because before, Daniel had always been a man of control. Decisions, movement, direction. Now, he was learning something different. Respect isn't just about what you do. It's about knowing when to pause. Elena adjusted her hold on Amara, settling into the chair. Daniel stayed where he was, watching, learning, not intruding. And in that moment, something shifted again. Because Elena realized something important. He wasn't trying to take space anymore. He was waiting to be given it. And that changed the dynamic completely. After a while she looked up. "You can sit," she said. Daniel nodded and took a seat nearby. Not too close, but not distant either. Balanced. As Amara fed, the room settled into a quiet rhythm. Then Elena spoke. "Do you know what the hardest part was?" Daniel looked at her. Not defensive, not cautious, just present. "What?" he asked. Elena's eyes didn't leave Amara. "Not that you left." A pause. "That you left without honesty." The words were calm, but they carried weight. Because this wasn't about anger anymore. It was about truth. Daniel swallowed slightly. "I didn't know how to say it," he admitted. Elena nodded faintly. "I know." Then she looked at him. But not knowing how doesn't remove the damage. That landed deeper than anything else she had said. Because it was simple, clear, undeniable. One of the hardest lessons in life is this: good intentions don't cancel harmful actions. Daniel leaned forward slightly, his hands clasped together. "I thought leaving quietly would hurt less," he said. Elena shook her head gently. "It hurt more." Silence. Because sometimes the truth doesn't need explanation. It just needs to be accepted. After a moment, Daniel nodded. "I see that now." And this time, he didn't try to defend it, didn't try to soften it. He just accepted it. And that was growth. Because another truth, often ignored, is this: real change begins the moment you stop explaining your mistakes and start owning them. Amara shifted slightly. Finished. Elena adjusted her gently, then stood up. Daniel watched carefully. "You want to hold her?" she asked. A simple question, but it carried meaning, because this time, she asked. Daniel nodded. "Yeah." He stood, stepping closer, and as she placed Amara into his arms, there was no hesitation from either of them. Not because everything was fixed, but because something was being built. Slowly, intentionally, and for the first time. It wasn't based on emotion. It was based on effort. And effort lasts longer than feelings ever do. Elena watched him quietly as he held Amara, then said something that would define everything moving forward. "This doesn't mean I trust you yet." Daniel met her eyes. "I know." A pause. "But it means I'm watching," she added. And that was more valuable than forgiveness, because being watched means you still have a chance to prove who you are. And this time, Daniel intended to. This chapter teaches something many people overlook. Real change is not in what someone says, it's in what they consistently do. Daniel is showing up now. But is that enough to rebuild what he broke? If you were in Elena's position, would you start to open your heart again? Or would you keep your guard up no matter what? Share your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear your perspective. And if you believe in stories that don't just entertain but teach real-life lessons about love, growth and accountability, don't forget to like, share and subscribe to Love Stories by Mr. Johnson. Because this journey is just getting started. And the real test is still ahead. Change is easy. At the beginning, that's what most people don't realize. The first few days, you show up, you try harder, you say the right things. But real change isn't tested in the beginning. It's tested when things become normal again. And that's where most people fail. 2 weeks passed. Daniel kept coming. Same time, same effort, no excuses, no missed days. And slowly, the house began to feel less like a place he was visiting, and more like a place he was allowed in. But Elena didn't rush that feeling, because she understood something now that she hadn't before. Consistency isn't proven by repetition. It's proven by endurance. That morning, the routine felt familiar. A knock. Elena opened the door without checking first. Daniel stood there, same as always. "Morning," he said. "Morning." No tension, no awkwardness, just rhythm. Inside, Amara lay awake in her crib, soft sounds filling the room. Daniel moved toward her naturally now, not asking, but not assuming either. He paused, looked at Elena. She gave a small nod. That was enough. He picked Amara up gently, and this time, it felt like second nature. Elena watched from across the room, not with suspicion, but with awareness, because something had shifted, not dramatically, but noticeably, and that shift came with something important. A test. Because just as things started to feel stable, life does what it always does. It interrupts. Daniel's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then quickly turned it face down. Elena noticed, not the action, the instinct. "Work?" she asked. Daniel nodded slightly. "Yeah, you can take it." He shook his head. "It's fine." A pause. "It's not urgent." Elena studied him for a moment, then said something simple. "Take it." Not as permission, as observation, because avoiding responsibility in one area, to prove effort in another, wasn't balance, it was compensation. And she could see that. Daniel hesitated, then picked up the phone, and stepped slightly aside. "Hey," he answered. His tone shifted instantly. Focused, professional. The conversation was short, direct, but as he spoke, his expression changed. Slight tension, slight pressure, something was off. When he ended the call, he stood still for a moment, then turned back. "What happened?" Elena asked, her tone calm, but observant. Daniel exhaled slightly. "There's an issue at work," he said. "Something I need to handle." Elena nodded, not surprised, because life doesn't pause just because people are trying to fix themselves. "Then go handle it," she said. Daniel frowned slightly. "I can stay." "No," she replied. "Clear, you shouldn't." A pause. "Why?" he asked. Elena held his gaze. "Because this is where people mess up." Daniel didn't move. "This is where you choose between showing up here and showing up in the rest of your life," she continued, her voice steady. "And real growth means you don't neglect one to prove the other." That hit deeper than he expected, because she was right. Again, balance is part of responsibility, not choosing one over the other. Daniel looked down briefly, then nodded. "I'll handle it and come back," he said. Elena didn't respond immediately. Then, "Okay." Simple, but this time, there was something else in it. Trust? Not fully, but something close to it. Daniel carefully placed Amara back in her crib, then looked at Elena. "I won't be long." She nodded once. "I'll be here." And that meant more than anything else, because she wasn't asking him to stay, and she wasn't expecting him to leave permanently. She was allowing him to move, and watching if he would return. Daniel grabbed his keys and headed for the door. This moment, small, ordinary, was actually bigger than anything dramatic, because this wasn't about betrayal. This was about consistency under pressure. And that was the real test. The door closed behind him. The house returned to quiet. Elena stood still for a moment, then walked over to Amara, her hand resting gently against the crib. "He'll come back," she whispered, not as hope, not as belief, but as something else entirely. A test, because now, it wasn't about what he said, it was about what he did next. And sometimes, the smallest moments reveal the biggest truths. The difference between words and actions is time. An hour passed. Then 2. Elena didn't check her phone, not because she wasn't curious, but because she refused to measure his effort through updates. She had learned something important. People don't prove themselves by what they say while they're away. They prove themselves by what they do when they return. Amara slept quietly. The house remained still. Life didn't pause. It moved forward. And so did she. Elena folded laundry slowly, her movements calm, her thoughts steady. No anxiety, no overthinking, because this wasn't about waiting. It was about observing. Across town, Daniel stood in the middle of his office, tension filling the room. Voices overlapped. Phones rang. Pressure built. A mistake had been made, not by him, but by someone under his leadership. And now, everything required his attention. Before, this would have consumed him, pulled him completely away from everything else. But now, something had changed. Not in the situation, but in how he handled it. "Fix it," he said firmly, "but do it right. No shortcuts." His tone was controlled, focused, but not distracted, because, for the first time, his life wasn't just about work anymore, and that shift was visible. Time passed. The issue was handled, not perfectly, but responsibly, and instead of staying longer, instead of getting pulled into more tasks, Daniel made a choice. He left, not because everything was done, but because he understood something now. Responsibility isn't about doing everything, it's about doing what matters most. Consistently. Back at the house, Elena stood by the window again, not waiting, just present. Then, a knock. Same rhythm, same intention. Her eyes didn't widen. Her heart didn't react, because this time, it wasn't a surprise. She walked to the door and opened it. Daniel stood there, exactly as he said he would. Not rushed, not late, just back. "I handled it," he said. Elena nodded. "I figured." A pause. He stepped inside. No explanation, no long story. Because this time, he didn't feel the need to prove anything with words. His presence already did that. Amara made a soft sound from the crib. Daniel moved toward her naturally. No hesitation, no checking. Because now, he understood his place here. And that understanding didn't come from permission. It came from consistency. Elena watched quietly, and for the first time, something shifted inside her. Not dramatically, but enough. Because this wasn't about one moment. It was about a pattern, and the pattern was holding. "You came back," she said. Simple, but meaningful. Daniel looked at her. "I said I would." A pause. Elena held his gaze for a moment longer, then nodded. "I know." And that was different, because before, she heard his words. Now, she believed his actions. And that's where trust begins. Not fully formed, but starting. Trust doesn't return all at once. It rebuilds in small confirmations over time. Elena leaned slightly against the wall. "You didn't stay longer than you needed to," she said. Daniel shook his head. "No. Why?" The question wasn't testing him. It was understanding him. He thought about it for a second. "Because I realized something," he said. A pause. "Before, I used work as a reason to avoid what mattered." Elena didn't interrupt. "Now, I don't want to use anything as an excuse again." Silence. Because that was honest. Not perfect, but real. Elena looked down briefly, then back at him. "That's the first time you've said something like that," she said. Daniel nodded slightly. "It's the first time I've understood it. And that mattered more than anything else. Because understanding changes behavior, not just words." Amara stirred again. Daniel gently picked her up, this time, without hesitation, without uncertainty. And Elena didn't watch closely anymore. Because something had shifted. Not fully, but enough to create space. And space is where trust grows. She walked back toward the kitchen, not disengaging, just moving naturally. And that simple act said more than anything else. Because she wasn't guarding herself the same way anymore. She was allowing, carefully, slowly, but genuinely. Across the room, Daniel stood holding Amara, his movements steady, his presence quiet. And for the first time, he didn't feel like someone trying to fix the past. He felt like someone building something new. And that was the difference. You can't repair a relationship by going backward. You rebuild it by becoming better moving forward. Elena glanced back at him briefly, not with doubt, not with certainty, but with something in between, possibility. And sometimes, that's the strongest place to begin again, just when things begin to feel steady. Life has a way of asking one more question. It didn't come as a storm, no warning, no dramatic entrance, just a message, simple, unexpected, and powerful enough to shift everything. That afternoon, Elena sat on the couch, Amara resting peacefully against her chest. The house was quiet again. Daniel had just left. Another visit, another moment of consistency, another step forward. Her phone buzzed. She reached for it without thinking, then paused, because the name on the screen was unfamiliar. She opened the message. "We need to talk." Her expression didn't change. Not yet. Then, another message came. "It's about Daniel." Silence filled the room. Not heavy, but alert. Elena's fingers stilled slightly on the phone. Because she had learned something recently. When the past returns, it rarely comes empty. Across town, Daniel sat in his car, parked just outside a store. He hadn't gone inside yet. His hands rested loosely on the steering wheel. His mind quieter than it had been in weeks. Because for the first time, he felt like he was doing something right. Not everything, but enough. And that feeling was new. His phone buzzed. He glanced down, and instantly, his expression changed. Sophia. He stared at the name, not surprised, but aware, because some chapters don't close just because you leave them. They wait until you're forced to face them properly. He didn't open the message right away. Instead, he leaned back slightly, exhaled, because he understood something now. Avoiding something doesn't resolve it. It only delays the moment you have to deal with it. Back at the house, Elena read the message again. It's about Daniel. Her eyes moved slowly across the words, not reacting, processing, because she wasn't the same woman who would panic, or assume, or react emotionally, before understanding. She typed, "Who is this?" The reply came quickly, "Sophia." And, just like that, the past had a name again. Elena's expression remained calm, but something deeper shifted. Not fear, not anger, awareness. Because now, this wasn't just about Daniel's growth. It was about whether his past would interfere with his present. Across town, Daniel finally opened the message. "We need to talk. You can't just pretend I don't exist." He stared at the screen, then locked it again, not responding, not yet, because he knew something had changed. Before, he would have avoided this, ignored it, delayed it. But now, he understood something different. Growth isn't proven when things are easy. It's proven when your past challenges your progress. Back home, Elena stood up slowly, walking toward the window, her mind steady, because this moment was important. Not because of Sophia, but because of what it represented. A test, not of the past, of the present. Her phone buzzed again. "I think you deserve to know the truth." Elena read it once, then again, still calm. Because she wasn't reacting to the message, she was preparing for what it meant. Across town, Daniel picked up his phone again. This time, he didn't hesitate. He dialed. Sophia answered almost immediately. "So, you finally decided to respond?" she said. Her tone wasn't angry. It was controlled, measured. "I didn't disappear," Daniel replied. A pause. "You did," she said. "Not emotionally. Factually, I left," he corrected. "And you didn't finish anything properly," she replied. Silence. Because that was true, and truth was something he had stopped running from. "I know," he said. Another pause. "Then let's talk," Sophia said. Daniel closed his eyes briefly, not out of frustration, out of decision. "Okay," he said. Back at the house, Elena looked down at her phone one last time, then placed it on the table, not responding, not engaging, because she understood something now that most people don't. You don't need to chase the truth. If it matters, it will come to you. She walked back toward Amara, her focus returning, grounded, because no matter what was coming next, her foundation didn't shake anymore. Across the city, Daniel started his car. This moment was different from all the others, because this time, he wasn't going back, he was going forward, to face something he should have handled a long time ago, and how he handled it now would define everything. The meeting didn't feel dramatic. It didn't need to. Some conversations don't explode, they unfold. Daniel sat across from Sophia in a quiet cafe, no raised voices, no tension in the air that others could notice. But between them, everything was being measured. "You look different," Sophia said. Not as a compliment, not as criticism, just observation. Daniel nodded slightly. "I am." She studied him for a moment longer. "I can see that," she said. A pause. "But that doesn't erase what happened." Daniel didn't argue. "I'm not here to erase anything," he replied. And that was the first sign this conversation would be different from before, because he wasn't trying to rewrite the past. He was trying to face it. Sophia leaned back slightly. "Do you know why I reached out?" she asked. Daniel held her gaze. "I assumed it wasn't random." She nodded. "It wasn't." A brief silence. Then she said it. "You didn't just leave Elena. You left things unfinished with me too." Daniel exhaled slowly. "I know." And again, no excuses, no justifications, just acknowledgement. Sophia watched him carefully. That was new. Before, he would have explained, defended, redirected. Now, he accepted. "That's not closure, Daniel," she continued. "I know." "Then what is it?" she asked. He paused, then answered honestly. "A mistake I didn't handle properly." The words landed, because they were simple and true. Growth begins when honesty replaces ego. Sophia nodded slowly. "Do you still think about this?" she asked. Daniel didn't hesitate this time. No, not harsh, not dismissive, clear. Her eyes held his for a moment longer, not even a little. She pressed. Daniel shook his head slightly. "I think about what I did wrong," he said. A pause. "But not about going back." Silence. Because that answer closed something, not dramatically, but completely. Sophia looked down briefly, then back at him. That's all I needed to know, she said. No anger, no bitterness, just resolution. Because sometimes people don't need you back. They just need clarity. Closure isn't about rekindling something. It's about ending it honestly. Daniel nodded. I should have done this earlier, he said. Yes, she replied. A pause. But you're doing it now. And that mattered, because timing may be late. But truth still has value. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Sophia stood. This is where it ends, she said. Daniel nodded. I understand. She gave a small, almost peaceful nod, then walked away. No drama, no looking back. Just closure. Across town, Elena sat quietly, Amara resting against her shoulder again. The house felt calm, unshaken, because she hadn't allowed herself to be pulled into something uncertain. She had stayed grounded, and that was growth. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it. Daniel, can I come by later? Simple, direct, no mention of what had happened, no explanation, just presence. Elena read the message once, then replied, okay, no questions, no assumptions, because she understood something now. You don't test people by interrogating them, you test them by observing how they act next. Later that evening, Daniel stood at the door again. Same knock, same presence, but something about him felt different. Not externally, internally. Elena opened the door. He met her eyes, and this time, there was no hesitation. I handled it, he said. She nodded. I know. A pause. She didn't ask what happened, didn't ask who he saw, because she wasn't chasing details anymore. She was watching behavior, and behavior was already speaking. Daniel stepped inside. Amara made a soft sound from the crib. He moved toward her, naturally, steadily, and Elena didn't follow. She stayed where she was, not guarding, not checking, because something had changed. Not completely, but enough, because for the first time, she felt something unfamiliar. Not trust, not yet, but something close to it. Confidence, not in him fully, but in herself. And that made all the difference. When you trust yourself, you don't fear being hurt the same way again. Daniel stood holding Amara, his movements calm, his presence steady, not trying to impress, not trying to prove, just being. And sometimes, that's the strongest proof of change. Healing doesn't always feel like progress. Sometimes, it feels like hesitation. Elena didn't notice it at first, because everything around her looked stable. Daniel kept showing up. Amara was growing. The house felt calm. Nothing was wrong. And yet, something inside her wasn't settled. That morning, she sat by the window, Amara asleep in her arms. The sunlight was soft, the air still, everything was peaceful. But her thoughts weren't, not chaotic, just questioning. Because for the first time since everything happened, the question wasn't about him, it was about herself. What am I actually holding on to? Not the pain. She had already moved through that. Not the anger. That had faded too. So, what was it? She looked down at Amara, her expression soft, then whispered quietly, am I protecting myself, or avoiding something? That question lingered, because it required honesty, and honesty doesn't always give comfortable answers. Sometimes we think we're being strong, when we're actually just being guarded. Across town, Daniel stood in a store, staring at a small shelf of baby items. He had been there for 5 minutes, not because he didn't know what to get, but because he was thinking, not about the items, about everything, because for the first time, things weren't chaotic. There was no crisis, no urgency, just consistency. And consistency creates something unfamiliar for people who are used to reacting instead of building. Stillness, and in that stillness, thoughts get clearer. He picked up a small toy, looked at it, then placed it back, not because it wasn't right, but because he wasn't trying to replace presents with things. One of the biggest mistakes people make is thinking effort equals gifts, when real effort is time and consistency. Back at the house, Elena gently placed Amara in her crib, then stood there for a moment, watching her, not out of worry, out of reflection, because Amara had become more than just her child. She had become a mirror, a reminder of what stability should feel like, consistent, safe, present. And that raised a deeper question. If I can build this kind of stability, why am I still holding back emotionally? The thought didn't bring fear. It brought clarity, because this wasn't about Daniel anymore. It was about her readiness. Healing isn't just about moving on from pain. It's about being ready to experience something new without fear controlling you. A knock came at the door, same time, same rhythm. Elena walked toward it, slowly. But this time, Her steps felt different, not cautious, not guarded, just aware. She opened the door. Daniel stood there. Same presence, same calm. "Hey," he said. "Hey." Their voices were softer now. Not distant, but not close, either. Balanced. He stepped inside. Placed a small bag on the table. "I didn't get much," he said. "Just what she needs." Elena nodded. "You don't need to explain that anymore." A pause. Daniel looked at her. "What do you mean?" Elena held his gaze. "It means I see what you're doing. Simple, but meaningful. Because recognition is different from approval." And he understood that. Amara made a soft sound from the crib. Daniel moved toward her naturally. No pause, no hesitation. And Elena didn't follow, because she didn't need to anymore. That trust in the moment was new, and it came from something deeper than emotion. It came from observation, from time, from consistency. Daniel gently picked Amara up, then turned slightly. "Elena," he said. She looked at him. "I've been meaning to ask you something." Her expression didn't change. "Okay." He hesitated for just a second, then asked, "Are you still holding back because of me, or because you're not ready yet?" The question landed, not as pressure, but as awareness, because he wasn't asking for access. He was asking for truth, and that was different. Elena didn't answer immediately, because this time, the answer mattered, not to him, to herself. She looked down briefly, then back at him, and for the first time, her honesty was directed inward. "I think," she started slowly, then paused. "I think I've been protecting myself so well," a soft breath, "that I haven't asked if I'm ready to feel anything again." Silence, but not heavy, honest, because this wasn't about blame. It was about awareness. Sometimes we heal from pain, but forget to open ourselves back up to growth. Daniel didn't move, didn't interrupt, because he understood something now. This moment wasn't about him proving anything. It was about her discovering something, and that mattered more. Elena leaned slightly against the wall. "I don't know what this becomes," she said, her voice calm, "but I know I don't want to stay closed forever." Daniel nodded slowly. "That's fair. No push, no expectation, just understanding." And that was growth on both sides, because before, they were reacting to each other. Now, they were understanding themselves, and that's where real change begins. Some decisions don't sound like decisions. They don't come with big words or dramatic moments. They come quietly, in the way you choose to respond, in the way you stop holding back, just a little. That evening, the house felt softer, not because anything had changed externally, but because something inside Elena had, not fully, not completely, but enough. Daniel sat on the couch, Amara resting against his chest, her small fingers curled gently against his shirt. The room was calm, no tension, no distance, just presence. Elena stood in the kitchen for a moment longer than necessary, not busy, thinking, because what she had said earlier stayed with her. "I don't want to stay closed forever." The words weren't emotional, they were intentional, and intention leads to action. She walked into the living room slowly. Daniel looked up briefly, not expecting anything, just acknowledging. Elena sat down, not across from him, beside him, a small distance, but not the same distance as before. And that was the decision, unspoken, but clear. Daniel didn't react immediately, because he understood something now. Not every step forward needs to be acknowledged out loud. Sometimes you respect it by not rushing it. So he stayed still, didn't move closer, didn't speak, just remained present, and that made the moment feel safe. Not pressured, not fragile, just real. Amara stirred slightly. Daniel adjusted instinctively, and this time, Elena didn't just notice, she relaxed, fully, because her body no longer felt the need to stay guarded. And that was the biggest shift of all. When your body feels safe, it means your mind is starting to trust again. Minutes passed, quiet, comfortable. Then Elena spoke. "Do you know what scared me the most?" Daniel turned slightly, not interrupting, not assuming. "What?" he asked softly. She looked ahead. "Not that you would hurt me again." A pause. "That I might allow it." The honesty landed deeper than anything else she had said, because it wasn't about him anymore. It was about her fear, her vulnerability, her awareness of her own capacity to trust. Daniel didn't respond immediately, because this wasn't something to fix. It was something to understand. "That's valid," he said quietly. Elena nodded faintly. "I know." Another pause. "But I also realized something." She turned slightly toward him. "I'm not the same person I was before." Daniel met her eyes. "I can see that." A small silence followed. Then she said it. So even if I choose to trust again, a breath, it won't be blindly. And that was the difference, because this wasn't about reopening her heart the same way. It was about opening it differently, with awareness, with boundaries, with strength. Real healing doesn't make you softer. It makes you wiser about who you allow in. Daniel nodded slowly. That's how it should be, he said. No resistance, no guilt, just acceptance. And that acceptance made the moment feel even safer, because he wasn't trying to rush her into something. He was allowing her to choose it. And choice is what creates real connection. Amara made a soft sound again. Elena leaned slightly closer, adjusting the blanket around her. Their hands brushed briefly, a small moment. But this time, neither of them pulled away immediately, not lingering, but not avoiding either. Balanced, and that balance was new. The room settled again. But this silence felt different from all the others before it. Not cautious, not uncertain, just open, not fully, but enough to begin something real. Elena leaned back slightly, her voice softer now. I'm not promising anything, she said. Daniel nodded. I'm not asking you to. A pause, but I'm not closed either. And that was everything, because she didn't give him certainty, but she gave him possibility, and possibility is where real rebuilding begins. Outside, the night settled quietly. Inside, nothing dramatic had happened. No big declarations, no sudden changes. Just two people, learning how to exist again, differently, better, and sometimes, that's the most powerful kind of progress. This chapter reminds us of something powerful. Healing doesn't just mean moving on from pain, it means learning how to open your heart again without losing yourself. Elena is no longer the same woman. And this time, her strength comes with awareness. So tell me, if you were in her position, would you slowly open up again? Or would you keep your heart protected, no matter what? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd really love to hear your perspective. And if you believe in stories that teach real lessons about love, growth, and second chances, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Love Stories by Mr. Johnson. Because what's coming next will prove if change is truly real, or just temporary. Real change isn't proven in comfort. It's proven when something challenges it. For weeks, everything had been steady, predictable. Daniel showed up. Elena allowed space. Amara grew. No tension, no disruption, just progress. But life doesn't measure growth in peaceful moments. It measures it when pressure returns. That morning, Daniel arrived as usual. Same time, same calm presence. He knocked. Elena opened the door without hesitation. Morning, he said. Morning. The exchange felt natural now. No effort, no awkwardness, just familiarity. Inside, Amara lay awake, soft sounds filling the room. Daniel moved toward her, picking her up gently. Elena watched from a distance, not observing every move anymore, just existing in the moment. And that alone showed how much had changed. Then, Daniel's phone rang. Not a buzz, not a notification. A call. He glanced at it. His expression shifted. Not panic, but seriousness. Elena noticed. Take it, she said. Daniel hesitated, then answered. Hello? His tone changed instantly. Focused. Sharp. The conversation was short, but different from the last one. This wasn't a small issue. This was bigger. When he hung up, he didn't move right away. Elena stepped slightly closer. What is it? She asked. Daniel exhaled slowly. There's a problem at the company, he said. Something serious. A pause. They need me there. Now. Silence. Because this moment was different. This wasn't a small interruption. This was a real pull, a real test. Before, this would have been easy. He would leave, stay gone, get consumed, and everything else would come second. But now, things weren't the same. Elena held his gaze and said something simple. Then go. No hesitation, no emotion attached. Just clarity. Daniel frowned slightly. You're sure? Elena nodded. Yes. A pause. Because if you don't go. She stepped a little closer. You're not actually changing. That landed because it reframed everything. Change isn't about choosing one responsibility over another. It's about handling all of them the right way. Daniel looked down briefly, then back at her. I'll handle it and come back, he said. Elena didn't respond immediately. Then, okay, simple, but this time, there was something deeper in it. Trust, not complete, but growing. Daniel gently placed Amara back into the crib, his movements slower now, more aware. Because this moment mattered, not just leaving, but returning. I won't disappear, he said. Elena met his eyes. I'm not asking you not to leave. she replied. A pause. I'm watching if you come back. And that defined everything. Because leaving wasn't the problem anymore. Not returning was. The real test of reliability isn't presence. It's consistency after absence. Daniel nodded, then grabbed his keys. He paused at the door for a brief second, not hesitating, acknowledging, then he left. The door closed. The house returned to quiet. Elena stood still for a moment, not anxious, not uncertain, just aware. Because this wasn't the same situation as before. This wasn't abandonment. This was a test. And she wasn't the same woman, waiting in fear. She was observing in strength. She walked toward Amara, gently lifting her into her arms. He'll come back, she whispered. Not as hope, not as belief, but as something stronger, expectation. Because now, his actions had created a pattern, and patterns reveal truth. Across the city, Daniel stepped into chaos. Voices, pressure, urgency. But this time, he didn't lose himself in it. He handled what needed to be handled, focused, efficient, not distracted, not avoiding. Because something had shifted inside him. Work was no longer his escape. It was just one part of his life, and that difference changed everything. Time passed. The issue wasn't fully resolved, but it was stable, manageable, and, for the first time, Daniel made a choice he had never made before. He stepped away, not because everything was perfect, but because he understood something clearly now. Responsibility isn't about finishing everything. It's about not neglecting what matters most. Back at the house, the sun began to set. Elena sat quietly, Amara resting peacefully against her. No tension, no waiting, just presence. Then, a knock. Same rhythm, same intention. She didn't rush. She didn't react. She walked to the door, opened it. Daniel stood there, exactly where he said he would be. Back. He came back. Not late, not rushed, not with explanations, just as promised. Elena stood at the door for a second longer than usual, not because she was surprised, but because this moment carried weight. You're back, she said. Daniel nodded. I said I would. Simple, but this time, it meant something deeper. Because this wasn't the first time he had said it. This was the first time. It had become a pattern. And patterns create trust. Elena stepped aside. Come in. No hesitation, no pause. Just acceptance. Daniel walked in, placing his keys down quietly. No tension followed him inside. No explanation needed, because this time, his actions had already spoken. Amara made a soft sound from the couch. Daniel moved toward her instinctively, lifting her gently into his arms, and Elena didn't watch closely, because something had shifted completely now. Not into full trust, but into something stronger than doubt, confidence. Not in him fully, but in the pattern he had built. She leaned slightly against the wall, her arms resting loosely. You didn't stay, she said. Daniel looked at her. I handled what I could, he replied. A pause. Then, I left. Elena nodded. And nothing fell apart. A small, almost thoughtful expression crossed his face. No, another pause. It didn't. And that was an important realization, because for so long, he believed everything depended on him being everywhere, doing everything, controlling everything. But now, he understood something different. You don't lose everything by stepping away for what matters. You lose what matters by never stepping away at all. Elena pushed herself off the wall slightly, stepping closer, not distant, not guarded, present. You handled it differently, she said. Daniel nodded. I had to. A pause. Not just for you, he added, then looked at Amara. For her, silence settled in, but it felt different now. Not cautious, not uncertain, just clear. Elena stood in front of him, her expression steady. You're not the same, she said. Not a question, an observation. Daniel didn't smile, didn't try to accept it as praise. I'm trying not to be, he replied. And that was enough, because this wasn't about perfection. It was about intention and consistency. Elena took a slow breath, then said something that changed everything. I don't feel the same fear anymore. Daniel looked at her, not hopeful, not expectant, just listening. Not because nothing can go wrong, she continued, her voice calm, but because I know I'll be okay, even if it does. That was the moment, the real shift, because this wasn't about trusting him completely. It was about trusting herself again. The strongest kind of healing isn't trusting someone else. It's knowing you'll be okay no matter what they choose. Daniel nodded slowly. I'm glad, he said, and he meant it, not because it benefited him, but because it meant she had truly grown. Elena stepped a little closer, not closing the space completely, but not keeping it wide either. Balanced. I'm not ready to go back to what we were, she said. Clear, firm. Daniel nodded. I understand. A pause. But, she added, and that word carried weight. I'm not against seeing what we can become. Silence. Not heavy, meaningful. Because that wasn't forgiveness, and it wasn't rejection. It was something in between. Possibility. And possibility is where real beginnings happen. Daniel didn't move closer, didn't react emotionally, because he understood something now. When someone opens a door slowly, you don't rush through it. You walk through it carefully. I'm okay with that, he said. And for the first time, it didn't sound like he was asking for more. It sounded like he respected enough. Amara stirred slightly in his arms. Elena reached out instinctively, adjusting the blanket. Their hands touched again. This time, they didn't pull away immediately. Not holding, not avoiding, just there, natural, real. And that small moment said everything. Because it wasn't forced. It wasn't emotional. It was simply comfortable. The room settled into quiet again. But this silence was different from every silence before. It wasn't filled with distance. It wasn't filled with tension. It was filled with understanding. Not perfect. Not complete, but real. Outside, the evening softened into night. Inside, nothing dramatic had happened. No grand declarations. No sudden reunions. Just two people who had learned something important. Love doesn't fail because people make mistakes. It fails when they refuse to grow from them. And this time, they had chosen differently. Not to go back, but to move forward, together, carefully, honestly. And that was the kind of ending that lasts. This ending teaches us something real. Love isn't proven by words, promises, or even emotions. It's proven by consistency, growth, and the choices we make when it matters most. Daniel came back. But more importantly, he stayed. And Elena didn't just heal. She grew into someone who understands her worth, her boundaries, and her strength. Now I want to hear from you. If you were Elena, would you fully take him back? Or would you keep things exactly where they are? And do you truly believe Daniel has changed? Or is it only a matter of time? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because your voice matters, and someone out there might learn from your perspective. And if this story touched you, taught you something, or made you reflect on love and life, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Love Stories by Mr. Johnson, where every story is more than just entertainment. It's a lesson that stays with you long after the story ends.